obviously the biggest impact has to do with everyone moving to work from anywhere. It's not actually working from home, it's working from any other space, or definitely not the office. And I think that is the biggest challenge, both for IT teams, or equally for IT teams, security teams, and employees alike. I think in all organizations across the world.
So what's your setup like?
Well, so I'm working from here from my home office. Didn't change much because at Acronis, the company is very mobile. As you mentioned, we have two headquarters, one in Singapore and one in Switzerland, Schaffhausen. And because of that, many of us travel a lot. So we get used to work from a hotel or from the airport or on the go. So I have my laptop with me. And of course, at home now, my setup also includes a high definition camera and a better microphone, so you can hear me well on a video conference. So this is the biggest things for me.
Okay. And Harish, how about yourself? What's changed for you with the pandemic?
Well, actually nothing changed really for me personally, because Red Hat as an organization, about 35 to 40% of us are remote anyway on a as per normal. In other words, they work from home wherever they are in the world, and to do what to do the job they are hired to do. I think the challenge was when we had individuals who never really had to do anything remotely. Typically, some of those who are in admin or the areas of finance and all that, that was a bit of a challenge for them. But, we overcame all that because as a norm, we already had all the infrastructure set up to be 100% remote anyway. So it was, it was really business as usual in many ways. We just carried on. So we had to support one another to make sure that, any issues that they come up with or they face, especially those who have never done this on a regular basis, are able to be supported and to be successful and to be productive at the end. And I think we had very little or probably next to zero downtime.
Okay. So that's probably not the case for most of the small and medium enterprises out there, right? Many are kind of network centric in the office where all the security is in place, and suddenly they're forced to go home. So how do you think that they've coped with the situation? Are there any sort of easier fixes that they could put in place, especially since we're looking at maybe more people working from home for a longer period of time and maybe even as an ongoing thing?
If I may step in on that one, I think the bigger challenge is workflow that needs to be adaptive. Because a lot of the workflow when you have people sitting around in an office environment, the workflow is kind of assumed within that space. When if the entire space is shrunk into just you and your device or devices, and then connected to the network and everybody else therefore remote, it changes how you have to do your processes. I think that's the biggest learning a lot of people had to go through, and to use software to help them to make that happen. And if they've never done it when they were in the organization, in the office, I think that has been the problem. And I think that really is an issue. I think we have seen that in the schools, for example, when they had to do remote learning, and that completely changed the dynamics of how it was supposed to be done and the challenges they faced. So likewise, in SMEs and organizations smaller, I think that was the biggest problem. And what we have done from a Red Hat point of view is to support them in the sense that give them help in how can they go about doing what needs to be done. Not all of them require the help, but those who have reached out to us, we try and help them in the manner that makes sense to ensure that they are benefiting from ideas that we have ourselves benefited from over the last 25 years as an organization. How do you work remotely and be productive at the same time?
Yeah. So there's so Kevin, in your case, you've got about 500,000 businesses and a lot of households. have they sort of been reaching out to try and get a better understanding of what they need to do?
Yeah, actually they do. We recently ran a survey to discover what has changed in this pandemic and post-pandemic situation, and how it affected the information security, first of all, because I'm doing information security. And so what we found was that I think that supports what Harry said, is that companies had to go through this transition, and they have to learn new methods of doing things that came naturally to them when they were all working in a collocated environment. So, and I think the communication is the biggest challenge, obviously. And so what we learned, for example, is that only 53% of workers received a clear communication when they switched to a remote setup. So basically, half of the working population in our survey did not know exactly what to do, and they have to rely on themselves, or they have to rely on their peers. And I think this is what Harish is saying, that if this peer support becomes essential in many situations, because often the management themselves finds themselves in a unfamiliar situation, so they also don't necessarily know what they need to do at this moment.
There's a lot of learning involved in this, right? Suddenly, and especially since they were thrown in the deep end. I presume a lot of them are sort of have kind of found their way, maybe. I mean, otherwise you're going to be very dysfunctional and ineffective as an organization, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think one of the in the conversations I've had, many others, is that they realized that there were things that they were doing when you were in a same physical space that perhaps you don't need to do that anymore. And that was a realization that was hard for some of these organizations to accept. And then there is this one whole group of individuals, the micromanagers, the over-the-shoulder type of management people, who suddenly didn't have their power base, as it were. And so they were going through a withdrawal symptoms of sort. No one to keep looking over the shoulder and say, why are you not doing this? So I think that was the other thing that probably made that group of individuals probably completely out of sync with everything else that they know from their life and world experience.
So besides not having to wear pants or nice looking bottoms, what else do you think they didn't have to do in a home environment?
Well, from my view, I might be biased, but from my view, security plays a big role here. So what we observe is that people start working from obviously from less protected networks. That would be one thing, right? I think many would agree that the home network is usually less taken care of than it would be an enterprise network. In terms of the segregation of the hardware that is connected to it, in terms of the patching of the devices and software that are being used there. So I think overall that creates a less protected environment, and organizations who rely on their perimeter protections, they often had them in a very hostile world, because now when perimeter is gone, I mean, there was this very long discussion in the security community that, the perimeter is disappearing and workloads migrating to cloud, and you cannot do this old ways of security when you control the stuff at your perimeter, and it was slowly dissolving, and then suddenly there was this massive change that it happened like almost overnight, and like the perimeter was going, and then it was just gone. And see that many organizations are simply not prepared for that from the security perspective. So I think that's a massive challenge.
So in terms of somebody sort of doing things at home, what are the basic things that they should have in place so that they continue to operate in a secure environment?
I think the important part here is well, there are a couple of things. So we need to learn how to operate in what is called the zero trust approach. So basically, in the old way of thinking about security was that you can say, okay, there's things inside of our network, they are trusted. Those things are outside of the network, they are not. And you cannot do this now anymore. So you need to learn how do you build this trust that is based not on the location of the device, but instead on the authentication protocols or remote attestation protocols and stuff like that. So I think here the important things that organization may do immediately. I mean, this is like a large architectural change for many, but what they can do immediately is that they need to reduce the level of trust, the whole cloud of trust, just to one point, being the endpoint, so the device the person is working at, and you consider everything else not trusted. And then, so you focus on protecting the endpoint, no matter where the endpoint is right now. So whether it is in a corporate network for some reason, or whether it is on the go somewhere, I don't know, in a coffee shop or at home environment or somewhere. And then when you come to this realization that you need to put some trust in the endpoint, you need to focus on how exactly you protect the endpoint. And that would mean ensuring that the software on the endpoint is properly managed. So there are all security updates in place. That would be one thing. And secondly, you need to make sure that there is a way for you to ensure that the configuration, so on top of the software is being there and updated, you also need to make sure that it's properly configured in a secure manner. And that comes with the various systems that allow for the remote configuration of the large fleets of client computers, client and server computers. I think Harish can add a few words here about the server side. So if you make sure that the endpoint is properly protected, and then the second thing is if you can make sure that the connection from your endpoints to servers is also properly secured with VPN or other protocols like TLS, then you can have a secure environment.
Harish, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like I said, we benefited from the fact that we have been doing remote for years. So we have all the necessary practices in place. And simple things like you're encrypting your laptops. When you boot up the machine, it is encrypted. So you have to decrypt your laptop before you can actually use it. And you connect to the network, to the corporate network through a VPN. And you have all the necessary two-factor authentication. And so, we have been doing that as a norm. So from our perspective, there was no change at all. And again, it goes back to what Kevin said, it is the endpoint that you want to secure, not the rest of it. So in other words, you bring the perimeter around your endpoint. It also does remind me of, I'm not sure whether the context will be familiar with some of you who are listening or watching. When the SAF, Singapore Armed Forces, when they set up SAF Military Institute, the SAFTI Military Institute, you could actually go all the way inside into their network, and they basically looked at it from a perspective of securing their own systems from both internally and from externally, instead of just only externally. So they figured out that the perimeter has to be the ones that you really need to protect, not the bigger space that you need to protect. and therefore you open up opportunities for others to come in and do whatever they want, but then your critical systems are always locked down. So the same model, I think we have to recognize that that's how we have to move forward. And I think a lot more people are getting the sense of it. I think the early days, if we were telling them, oh, you should secure, you should have VPN access, you should do this, you should do that, it was, there was no hurry for that. I think today there is a significantly higher understanding of what that actually means. And so, yes, in our case, it was fairly easy because we have been doing it as the norm for, from the beginning. So we didn't have to think too much about it for our own purposes.
So what do you think some of the people who are working at home are doing wrong?
I think there's no different from what they were doing wrong when they were in the office.
I know, but like still, it's a different
clicking on mails
environment,
and stuff
but,
like that.
Yeah. So it's all the phishing attempts and stuff like that?
Yeah, those things will continue no matter where you are, right? Because they want to find out, they want to get, I mean, like today I received an email and it came from a large credit card service provider. And I don't recall ever giving them my email address, and they are offering something new. I mean, it looks extremely legitimate, and I think it is legitimate, but I don't trust it because the credit card provider, one of those, the big ones, why would they want to send me directly? Because I always go through the issuing bank. So it was a bit strange when I received that, but it looked extremely legitimate, and it still does. I looked at the email headers and everything. It looks very legitimate. So, who knows whether it was a legitimate phishing attack? But I'm not even trying to click on it, the links in it. But things like that, you have to be extra careful. That's all I can say.
I think I can add a few words on top of that. I agree that people are doing the things that they were doing in the past. But I also think that in a home environment, they feel a bit more relaxed, maybe. So we definitely see, I mean, it's a common knowledge that Netflix observed the rise of their traffic, even during the working hours, right? So which basically brings us to a conclusion that not everyone is working all the business hours while they stay at home. And I think if there were statistics published by social networks, I think we also would see a surge of traffic there. So I think some people, I'm not saying everyone, but definitely some people dedicated more time to non-work related activities when they work from home. And on top of that, they are more indeed exposed to various attacks in that area. And the reason why they are more exposed to those attacks is because, again, their organizations used to build their security based on this perimeter thinking. So in the past, what you would do, you would go and buy an expensive firewall from, I don't know, some top tier firewall vendor like, Cisco, Palo Alto, Checkpoint, you name it, right? And you would think, okay, I'm protecting my corporate network and people who are working from the office using the functionality that is built into that firewall. So maybe I can protect them from phishing sites, for example, because the vendors of firewalls often have those feeds for phishing links. So you will be protected if you're connected via those firewalls. Now, those people are working from home, and if they receive a phishing emails, and if they misclick, I mean, we all know from the statistics that despite all efforts and it's also my personal experience, that despite all efforts on the anti-phishing training, a carefully constructed spear phishing email that is tailored to your organization, that is tailored to your personal history, maybe like if attackers did some research on you, it has a very good chance to make you click. And with people working from home, and like even average quality phishing emails have an industry average success rate between 15 and 25%, depending on the organization and organizational maturity. So a lot of people actually click. And this is why attackers actually do phishing emails, because phishing works. That's the point. So now you don't have this perimeter security. You work from home. You are not behind this corporate firewall. There is nothing there which can prevent you from visiting a phishing site. And with organizations that do not put the protections at the endpoint, they are now not protected. And so I think this is the reason why there is a rise of the phishing attacks, because phishing attacks are getting a bit more successful because there is no this perimeter security. And I think this is why we are hearing about recent ransomware attacks, like the high profile ones, that there were a few even in the past month. Because those are the direct consequence of employees not being protected first. And the second thing, that the companies have to rush setting up their remote access infrastructure. So because everyone is working from home, they need to scale it up. And sometimes because they're in a rush, they are not able to put all protections in place. So we see there was stats, and I think I did some research there, and we see that there was like an order of magnitude of growth of, for example, RDP ports, remote desktop protocols ports exposed to the internet, because organizations were setting up them like crazy. So I think those two things contribute a lot to the growth of those attacks.
It used to be that with phishing, you could kind of spot it, bad grammar, and spelling mistakes and stuff like that. Have they sort of cleaned up that, and are they becoming more and more slick? Like Harish, in your case, the letter from the bank. Do you generally see an improvement in in the use of language and the communication from phishing sites?
I don't know. I mean, I can't comment on that one.
Sure.
I really rarely get it, but
Okay, because I'm sure a lot of people get it and think it's legit and click on it, right?
Well, we see based on our statistics that many people do. Well, as I said, like depending on organization, 15 to 25%. And I also think that the quality of phishing attacks grows because there is a lot of money in that business.
How much money do you think all this phishing makes for them?
Well, based on what we heard from journalists, just to give you an example, Garmin paid $10 million for the attack. So, which basically means that for the criminal out there, one successful attack is probably gonna be enough for them to do the early retirement. That's how much money is in there. So I think there is like literally millions, maybe billions now.
Was the Garmin attack before the lockdown, or was it? I'm trying to recall when it happened.
It was during the lockdown time.
Okay. So their guard was down a bit, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you also in your report, it says that 92% of global companies surveyed had to adopt new technologies to work remotely. So that's a great level of unpreparedness on the part of companies, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's it's a given, right? I remember a cartoon that basically showed a picture where on the left side of the cartoon of the picture was a view into a conference room where there was a bunch of people seated around the conference room with the CEO or whoever it is talking to them, and the person saying, oh, digital transformation, we are in no hurry, we got all the time we want to do this, and so we don't have to do it this year. And then when you zoom out and you look on the right side of the frame, you see a huge wrecking ball swinging towards that building and with the word COVID on it. So you can see this coming all the way in, and it's going. And in the meantime, he and his team is sitting there talking about whatever they need to do and saying, there's no hurry in any of these things. So yes, it is there.
Yeah.
Whether they like it or not, they were not prepared. Majority of them were not prepared. I mean, it's no surprise, but it is unfortunate they had to go into the deep end of the pool in order to, in some ways clean out the unpreparedness.
I think the world was thrown in the deep end with this one, right? I mean, nobody kind of expected COVID to hit with such suddenness and such ferocity. So we've all been kind of caught out, because I think everybody thought, okay, we've got a bit of time, there's a bit of a runway, and suddenly that got cut off. And what are they saying? Is it 5 years worth of digital development was suddenly crammed into this space or something like that?
I would probably say, yeah, probably 10 years worth of stuff happened in a couple of weeks.
So that would have kept you guys quite busy, right? I mean, for both of your organizations, you would have had to generate new things maybe, or were you just out there sort of dealing with the situation and offering what you've got?
Okay.
Go ahead.
For me personally, I said at Acronis, we work remotely and we also travel a lot. Like our CEO is like on the plane, I think like 80% of his time. So it was not a shock that we need to work remotely. However, we came to a realization that we need to scale up. So basically we continued to use what we were using. However, instead of, say, I don't know, like 1/3 of the organization working remotely all the time, it was suddenly 100% of organization working remotely all the time. And we had to beef up our infrastructure a little bit. That we managed to do quickly due to the cloud technologies that we employ. But more importantly, I think this is where we started, that people had to learn new ways of communicating. And I think here, the leadership plays a big role. Like when this situation started, for example, our CEO had bi-weekly all-hand calls, and at some point we had even weekly all-hand calls in all geographies, just to inform people about the change, about what we are doing about it, what are the next steps, how people need to prepare themselves, what they need to do, how this affects the whole organization, things like that, like the communication from the top of the company to everyone directly. And it was possible thanks to technologies like video conferencing, Zoom, and stuff. That was one thing. And the second thing, within the leadership team, we had actually daily calls. At some point, we had actually 2 calls a day, like every 12 hours we had a call, because Acronis is a global company, so some people are working in Asia, some in Europe, and some in Americas. So we had calls daily to catch up with the news, to understand the future development, and to make changes, like immediate decisions about what we need to do, and whether we need to shut down all offices across the organizations, whether we need to stop all business trips, things like that. So we had to act very quickly. And I think that was this like real crisis time when this crisis committee came together. It was not big, like about maybe like 10, 15 people. But we were able to make decisions quickly, and we were able to communicate them to everyone in a very efficient manner. So I think that was an important part of the response.
So that's internal, right? I mean, that's your internal sort of communications that you're referring to. How about your customers? Did you get a lot of customers asking things, trying to get clarification, did you have more demand for product as a result of this?
we did.
I think it's a given. Yeah, there is a lot more assistance that was requested, but I think they also were looking at how do we do what we do, right? How do we manage? And they want to lessons learned from how we manage to do and manage the entire engagement and so on. So like when things got locked down, no customer visits, nothing, zero, unless otherwise it is so critical that you need to be down there for whatever reason. But it must be checked and double checked. It's no longer a frivolous kind. It cannot be treated as a, oh, just come down and have a look or something. No. So as much as possible, you have to develop skills with the customer, because sometimes customers aren't able to explain clear enough what it is that they require help with, because sometimes it's just the face-to-face seeing each other. So things like video conferencing tools are very helpful in making that happen. But at the same time, not missing the point about being, trying to be very clear, being precise, being able to describe a problem or ask for a solution, being more precise. I think that level is still not there yet, but I think that is what more people are beginning to appreciate. I should be able to describe what I require rather than, you come here, let's talk about it and so on. And just to add on to that a little bit, one of the things from how we adapted from being online and doing stuff remotely is that we change our work scheme, the way we do stuff. For example, when we have meetings, even with customers, we say, look, we will block out 1 hour, but we will only deal with the first half hour to get to whatever it is. So get to the point very quickly. No, deviations, no meandering of a topic, to get to a point. And then at the end of the half hour, we kind of wrap up everything so that you free up the remaining half hour as much as possible so that you've got time to take a breath, do whatever it is, because chances are the next one starts at the top of the hour again. So you have to relook how you do stuff, especially with customers, and then figure out how best. In fact, a lot of customers are they themselves not in their physical premises. They are also remote. So what is it that we are going to be able to do or need to do with a customer going on site, unless it is systems, computers, and stuff like that? Otherwise, what additional benefit is there going to be?
Actually, this makes it more efficient for everybody, doesn't it? I mean, you waste less time. You don't need to go someplace. You can just get onto it and get on with it.
It forces you to be more precise, less nebulous, and less vague. I think that is, to me, that's the biggest advantage. Like when you call for a meeting, for example, what is the agenda? What is it that you're calling a meeting for? I generally don't accept meetings at all, unless if there's no agenda in the meeting, I'm not going to bother accepting, because what is this for? And so again, we never really cared much about it in the before times. But now I think this norm, the habit, has to be forming in people's work schemes, so that put down what is the agenda, even if it is one item, put it down, so that we are now able to, okay, that's what you're going to talk about. So I know what it is, and therefore you're focused on it. Otherwise, it's open-ended. There are times for that. I'm not saying no, but for the vast majority, you need to be focused and get to the point. And I think having a time discipline changes, again, how you approach with the customers and internally as well. So our model of half hour, I mean, at least from my perspective, from my team, is half hour. A meeting is only half an hour, really. You must state the agenda. If there's no agenda, it doesn't happen.
Okay. Yeah, I totally concur to that. I think communication is very important, and being prepared. Meetings are getting more expensive in terms of the effort and in terms of the like emotional and mental commitment. It's just harder for like to do this over the video conference. So it is now necessarily for people who organize those meetings to put an agenda. Like, this is a basic tip. I totally agree that it's like extremely important. And the second thing is also another tip from my side here. I start asking my team and my peers to make meeting minutes in internal wiki instead of sending them as a follow-up email. And there is a reason for that. The reason for that is that because there are that many meetings, like that go back to back often. I don't know how many I have in my calendar. Probably I have like, I don't know, 7, 8 calls today. And many of them are back to back. So some people sometimes just cannot attend all of them, even if they want to. So they need to find a way to read those meeting minutes. And in emails, sometimes those emails get lost, and we also feel that email is not a storage media, it's a communication media. So if you want something to persist, and if you want to have a follow-up, you need to put it in a document that is available to everyone in your organization, ideally. So in our case, internal wiki pages work. I know that there is this famous GitHub handbook for remote work. GitHub works remotely. They put everything that they can online in their system, for like all meeting minutes and all follow-ups. And they also try to reduce actually the use of emails, and instead they leave comments to those pages, which we also do, so that those communication is available to the people who were not present at this moment for some reason, and also that it persists not in your inbox somewhere, but in a corporate system.
So just to add to that as well, I mean, because our heritage is from the open source community, and open source community is remote by definition. So when you are working on open source projects or whatever it might be, how would you document your communication? Yes, emails are one of them, but the other one is, in the case of like blog posts, for example, or wiki pages and shared documents, so that when, in our case, for example, when we have meetings, there is a shared document open at that time where all of us attending the meeting have access to that. And so that becomes the place where the minutes are actually taken in real time. So at the end of the half hour, you pretty much have the minutes done. So I can see what I said or someone said, and when I'm not speaking and someone is speaking, and I can then take the notes, and I can be the person. So we rotate among ourselves who's the one taking. It's not saying, oh, now can you take the notes? It's just, okay, you're talking, I'll take over, I do that. It's just by eye contact, because it's on a conference call. It becomes very easy for me to just take over and do it, or the other person take over when I'm speaking, so that we are consistent. And at the end, when it is all said and done, after the half hour, oh, okay, we got all the minutes, that job done. And then the second half hour, do whatever you want to do. So it is using the tools that helped open source to be successful, so that organizations can also do that moving forward with this kind of a work environment where everybody is remote.
I suppose dictation tools might also be helpful if you don't want to key in your minutes, right? Might not be very accurate.
Yeah, of course you can do that. I mean, there are some of these video conferencing tools have a subtitling, or what do you call it, annotation or whatever they call it, in real time. Yeah, sure, you can certainly use that, but that's not quite the same as putting notes, because then you know what action item, because you need to have a little bit more structure. If so and so said this, and it's going to be done by this time, and these are the people involving in that. So that kind of these dictation notes and all that do not necessarily capture that aspect of it, which you then have to go back and add to it as well. So, but certainly helpful.
You guys see a spike in offerings in terms of software and apps for people having to work from home because of the pandemic? Understanding what the pandemic has done, how people need to react to it, do you see an increase in the software or programs made available as a result of this, which would be different to what's already out there?
Well, in the report that you referred to, right, 92% of organizations have to adopt new technologies, and almost 64%, so almost 2/3 of the organizations have to adopt various collaboration tools. So I think that on one hand says about this level of not being prepared. I think this is what Harish has mentioned already. But also I think it it highlights how important those collaboration tools are now. Like, it's not only about this video conferencing tools, but it's also about this corporate documentation stuff like wikis and anything that has to do with that. So this is like 2/3 of organizations do, and then almost half of organizations, more than half of organizations, they have to adopt VPNs and everything that has to do with the remote access. It's 52%. So there's this, VPNs primarily, but also other technologies for remote access like remote desktops and stuff. And then goes the endpoint security. I think this is something that we've mentioned because there is no perimeter. You need to protect the endpoint. And it's again like a very significant margin. And the rest, if you look at the report, like the rest is not significant almost, right? So there's 3 pillars that you have here: is a collaboration, secure access, and securing the endpoint. This is what matters now.
Harish, anything that
sounds about right. I mean,
yeah,
we didn't have to, we don't have products per se that address it in that sense, because it's what we do is across all organizations, and what they need to do from their perspective, as what Kevin was saying, it is that those 3 areas. Make sure your endpoint is secure. That's it has to be given. I mean, in our case, that's how we have always been. The endpoint is secure. I mean, we are running Linux systems anyway, so it's by default already secure. But point is, you secure it down and lock it down, and every access is through a VPN, and you're good to go. You didn't have to change anything in that sense.
Okay, cool. Well, we're almost at the end of time, and that response also addresses Patricia's question about the future of organizations in trying to remain secure given what's taken place and what might unfold down the line. Just as a parting question to both of you, how do you see the future shaping up? Oh, I must have freaked Harish out and switched off. How do you see the future? Well done. Welcome back. How do you see the future of work with your customers and in your own environments?
I think we will see more of the old remote. I also think, well, I'm optimist here, right? I think sooner or later, I hope it will be sooner than later, but sooner or later, we will have the vaccine that will allow people to travel again. And I think in that regard, I think the world will return to the new normal, to normal ability to go and meet people and see them personally. But I also think this time, while we all cannot do that, will teach us how to do things efficiently without need to travel or come in person. I think it's still a challenge for example, critical infrastructure organizations. So some organizations that rely a lot on the air-gapped networks, right? So they say, okay, like our network is super critical, we don't want it to be connected. And then they still have to walk in there and do something. I think this also will change somehow. And I think that in the meanwhile, we will learn how to walk from anywhere. It's not home, not necessarily home. As I said, I think many people will be walking on the go from a hotel, from a plane, from a coffee shop down the road, from a library. I like walking from libraries personally. I like books, and Singapore has excellent libraries, and it's a great place to be in. I really love it. So I think this will be like that. This is the important shift that will happen. So even if when we are back and we will be able to see everyone, I think this part will stay and it will play a significant role.
Cool. Harish, how about your view on the world?
I hope people won't tear down what they have already built trying to respond the way we have for today, because that would basically mean that you never learn the lessons. Hopefully, also that the I mean, having the vaccine all is great to have, and it's good to be able to shake somebody's hand. But I think you need to also innovate on how else you need to do what we're doing today. And I give you an example of what I do within Red Hat, for that matter. I mean, it's me, and then some of my other colleagues do it as well. One of the things that you see in an office environment is the opportunity to just go to the pantry, for example, and you walk by somebody's desk, and if the person is there, you say hi, you have a chat, and 5 minutes later or half an hour later, you move on and do something else. That serendipity kind of opportunity is very hard in this space. How do I do that? How do I have the chat that you can get at a pantry or at the random place in the office? So what I have done is I make myself available, what I'm calling it as office hours. It's a half hour every in the morning, half hour, and an afternoon half hour, where I have my camera, and I'm on our video conferencing tool for the organization, and we are there. I'm there, and if you show up, you have a chat. So you don't have to predetermine anything. You don't have to schedule it. You don't have to. No, this is the no agenda ones, right? This is just show up. It's just like you come by to my cubicle, come back to my room, just say hi and say, how are you doing? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And you have a chat, have a cup of coffee, whatever it might be. I don't really care. Even if it's 1 minute, that's fine. If it's half an hour, that's fine. And if there's more people there, that's fine. It's okay. So I do that. I have 2 slots, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And I do have my colleagues come dropping by and all that, which is kind of nice. And you have a chat about whatever it is. So this way you open up, you try and adapt the situation you have in a physical space into the virtual space. And I think, I personally found it very useful because, now I have my colleagues from not only in the Singapore office, but from anywhere else in Red Hat who, connects to it. So that's just kind of nice. So that's my suggestion and to add to for the future as well.
Cool. I think that's a great way of maybe wrapping up the session. A bit of optimism, a bit of still connecting with the world, even be it virtually. But Kevin and Harish, thank you so much for your insights and your inputs and your thoughts about what's taking place and what's to come. The world is I mean, we've been rocked around, so we'll just have to see how it settles at the end of it. And what sort of path we're going to be taking. But it's good to know that certain things need to be in place, being secure, being able to operate in a way where we can still be effective and efficient and still contributing to the larger cause, whatever that may be. I think there'll be a lot of changes also. Jobs will be lost, industries will change. So we will need that agility and ability to make changes on the fly sometimes, to cope and adapt. So I think with both of you out there doing your stuff, it will make things easier for your customers and for everybody else as well. Thanks again for being on this web chat, and we'll stay in touch at some point again. Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kanan.
Bye.
Thank you, Kevin.